I stared at Connor Copper across his mahogany desk, my hands trembling slightly as I held the severance papers. After 14 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and unwavering loyalty to Datamax Solutions, this was how it ended. 2 weeks' pay? I whispered, reading the pathetic offer again. Connor, I've been here since you had 3 employees working out of your garage. He didn't even look up from his computer screen. His salt and pepper beard couldn't hide the smirk playing at his lips. Company policy, Audrey. Everyone gets the same deal when we downsize. My stomach dropped. The same deal? I knew for a fact that when Connor let go of Jennifer from accounting last month, she'd gotten 6 months severance. I'd processed the paperwork myself, but apparently my 14 years meant nothing. I built your entire client database system, I said, my voice cracking. I trained half the staff you're keeping. Connor finally looked at me, his cold blue eyes showing no emotion. And we appreciate that. But times are tough. Take it or leave it. I stared at him for a long moment, then quietly stood up. I'll need some time to think about it. Walking back to my cubicle felt like a funeral march. My coworkers avoided eye contact, probably already knowing what had happened. News traveled fast in our small office. I sat down at my desk, staring at the family photos I'd collected over the years. 14 years. I'd started here fresh out of college, when Connor was just another startup dreamer. I'd watched this company grow from 3 people cramped in his garage to a 50-employee operation in downtown Portland. I'd been there for every milestone, every late-night crisis, every celebration. I remembered the early days when Connor would promise us equity, saying we were all family. He'd bought pizza for the team when we landed our first big client. Back then, he seemed genuine, grateful for our dedication. But success had changed him. The Connor I'd worked for in recent years was different, colder, more calculating. He'd moved into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows while the rest of us stayed in cramped cubicles. His handshakes became firmer, his smiles more forced. Now, facing this insulting severance offer, I realized I'd been naive to trust him. Family doesn't treat family like this, but I had something Connor didn't know about, something that could change everything. That night, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee, thinking about my options. My husband Tom found me there at midnight, still staring at the severance papers. 2 weeks, he asked, reading over my shoulder. After 14 years? I nodded, feeling numb. He acted like he was doing me a favor. Tom sat down beside me, his face flushed with anger. This is wrong, Audrey. You know more about that company than anyone except Connor himself. He was right. Over the years, I'd gradually taken on more responsibilities. I managed client relationships, handled sensitive financial data, and even had access to Connor's email when he traveled. I'd seen things that would make our clients very uncomfortable. What are you going to do? Tom asked. I looked at my laptop sitting closed on the counter. Inside that computer were 14 years of emails, documents, and files I'd saved as backup copies. Standard practice, Connor had always said. Keep everything. You never know when we'll need it. Well, now I needed it. I'm going to sleep on it, I told Tom. But deep down, I already knew what I had to do. Connor wanted to play hardball? I'd been watching him operate for 14 years. I knew exactly where all the bodies were buried. The next morning, I walked into Datamax with my decision made. I found Connor in his office, already on a conference call. He waved me away, but I stayed put. When he finally hung up, his expression was annoyed. I'll take your offer, I said, placing the signed papers on his desk. His eyebrows raised slightly. Smart choice. I'll have HR process this today. Your last day is Friday. Actually, I'd like to use my remaining vacation days. I have 3 weeks saved up. Connor shrugged. Fine, clean out your desk and leave your access cards with security. I nodded and turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. I'll need to transfer all my client files to whoever's taking over my accounts. Don't worry about it, Connor said, already turning back to his computer. We'll figure it out. That was his first mistake. Those client files contained years of correspondence, including some very interesting emails Connor probably forgot he'd sent me. As I walked back to my desk, I couldn't help but smile. Connor had always been careless with details. That carelessness was about to cost him everything. I spent the morning quietly copying files to my personal drive, something our outdated IT policies didn't prevent. Amazing how a company that processed sensitive data had such weak internal security. Over the next 3 weeks, while officially on vacation, I became a detective investigating my own former workplace. I organized the files I'd collected, creating a timeline of Connor's questionable decisions over the past 5 years. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Connor had been systematically overcharging clients, hiding behind complex service agreements that buried the real costs. He'd inflated project hours, charged for work that was never done, and pocketed the difference. But the worst discovery was an email thread from 6 months ago. Connor had been corresponding with a competitor, Datatech Industries, discussing a potential sale of Datamax. The problem? He'd specifically mentioned selling client data as part of the deal, something that violated every confidentiality agreement we'd ever signed. I printed everything, creating a thick folder of evidence. Bank statements, email threads, inflated invoices, client complaints that were never addressed. It was all there. Connor had been running his own personal money-making scheme while his loyal employees worked for peanuts. My phone buzzed with a text from my former coworker Lisa. "Missing you already. New girl can't figure out your filing system. Chaos over here." I smiled grimly. Connor was about to discover that losing me was the least of his problems. I decided to start with Datamax's biggest client, Pacific Northwest Industries. I'd worked directly with their CEO, Jennifer Walsh, for 8 years. We'd built a solid professional relationship, and I knew she valued honesty above everything else. I called her office on a Wednesday morning. Her assistant put me through immediately. "Audrey, I heard you left Datamax. I'm so sorry to lose you," Jennifer said warmly. "Actually, that's why I'm calling. I need to meet with you about something important, something about your account with Datamax that you should know." There was a pause. "That sounds serious. Can you come in this afternoon?" 2 hours later, I sat in Jennifer's sleek conference room, my folder of evidence spread across the polished table. Her expression grew darker as I walked her through the overcharges, the phantom services, and the inflated hours. "This invoice from March," I said, pointing to a particular line item. "Connor charged you for a full system upgrade that never happened. He billed 40 hours for work that took our team 6 hours to complete." Jennifer's face was stone. "How much are we talking about?" I pulled out my calculator. "Based on what I can document, approximately $400,000 over the past 2 years. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, processing the information. "What else?" I took a deep breath and told her about the planned data sale to Datatech. Jennifer's reaction was explosive. She stood up so fast her chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "He's planning to sell our confidential data?" she shouted. "Our proprietary manufacturing processes, our client lists, our financial projections?" I nodded, sliding the printed emails across the table. "It's all in here. He's been negotiating with Datatech for months." Jennifer grabbed her phone and dialed. "Get me our legal department. Now." She covered the phone and looked at me. "Audrey, I need you to make copies of everything. We're going to bury him." While Jennifer spoke with her lawyers, I thought about the other clients who deserved to know the truth. Datamax served 12 major companies in the Pacific Northwest. They all trusted Connor with their most sensitive information, and he'd been betraying that trust while counting his money. My phone buzzed with a call from Connor. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to his message. "Audrey, I've been thinking about your severance package. Maybe we can work something out. Call me back." Too little, too late. I deleted the message and made copies of my evidence folder. This was just the beginning. Jennifer finished her call and turned back to me. "My lawyers want to meet with you tomorrow morning. They're also contacting the State Attorney General's office. This could be criminal fraud." My heart raced. I'd expected anger, maybe a lawsuit. But criminal charges? Connor had really stepped in at this time. Word traveled fast in Portland's business community. By Thursday afternoon, I'd received calls from 3 other Datamax clients who'd heard rumors about problems with their accounts. I scheduled meetings with each of them, armed with evidence specific to their contracts. The second meeting was with Andrew Peters, CEO of Northwest Manufacturing. His company had been with Datamax for 6 years, and Connor had been systematically overcharging them for data storage services they never received. Look at this, I said, showing Andrew his latest invoice. Connor charged you for premium cloud storage, but your data is sitting on the same basic servers as everyone else. You're paying triple the rate for standard service. Andrew's jaw tightened as he reviewed the documents. This is fraud, plain and simple. It gets worse, I continued, showing him the emails about the data sale. Your manufacturing specifications, your supplier lists, your cost breakdowns. Connor was planning to sell all of it to Datatech. Andrew immediately called his legal team. Within an hour, Datamax received their second cease and desist letter in 2 days. By Friday, I'd met with 4 clients total. Each meeting ended the same way. Angry phone calls to lawyers, immediate contract cancellations, and threats of lawsuits. Connor's world was starting to crumble, and he didn't even know I was the one with the sledgehammer. That evening, Tom opened a bottle of wine to celebrate. How does it feel to be the most popular person in Portland? I laughed, but part of me felt sad. I genuinely loved working at Datamax in the early years. Connor had ruined something that could have been great. Monday morning brought chaos to Datamax. I knew this because Lisa texted me constant updates from inside the office. 3 clients canceled contracts today. Connor is freaking out, she wrote. Legal papers being delivered every hour. Connor locked himself in his office. Emergency staff meeting called. Connor looks terrible. I spent the morning at home, organizing my evidence for the Attorney General's investigation. They'd scheduled an interview with me for Wednesday, and I wanted to be thoroughly prepared. Around noon, my phone rang. Connor again. This time I answered. Audrey, we need to talk, he said. His voice strained. Something's happening with our clients? And I think there's been a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? I asked innocently. They're claiming we overcharged them, but I think someone gave them bad information. I was hoping you might know something about it. I almost laughed at his attempt to sound casual. I'm not sure how I could help, Connor. I don't work there anymore. Look, forget about the severance package. Come back to work. We'll figure out a better deal. I'm afraid I've already moved on, I said, but good luck with everything. I hung up and immediately called Jennifer Walsh to give her a heads up. Connor was desperate, which meant he might try something stupid. Tuesday brought even more chaos. Lisa's texts were getting increasingly frantic. 2 more clients gone. Connor fired 3 people. Lawyers everywhere. FBI agents just walked in. Connor's computer got seized. He's not saying anything. The FBI? I hadn't expected federal involvement, but apparently selling client data to competitors crossed some serious lines. I felt a mix of satisfaction and nervousness. This was bigger than I'd imagined. My phone rang constantly with calls from reporters who'd somehow gotten my number. Word had leaked about a major fraud investigation at Datamax, and they wanted quotes from former employees. I declined all interviews, but I did call the Attorney General's office to move up my appointment. They agreed to see me that afternoon instead of Wednesday. The meeting lasted 3 hours. I walked them through every piece of evidence, explaining Connor's schemes in detail. The investigators were particularly interested in the data sale emails and the systematic overcharging of government contracts. How long do you think this has been going on? Asked Agent Rodriguez. At least 5 years, based on what I can document, but probably longer. And you kept copies of everything? Connor always told us to keep backups. I was just following company policy. Agent Rodriguez smiled grimly. Good thing you're a dedicated employee. When I left the federal building, I felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Justice was finally coming. Wednesday morning's newspaper featured Datamax on the front page. Local tech company under federal investigation for fraud. The article detailed the client lawsuits, the FBI raid, and the potential criminal charges. Connor's photo stared back at me from the page, looking haggard and defeated. The article mentioned that several former employees had provided evidence to investigators, but my name wasn't mentioned. I preferred it that way. Lisa called me that morning, sounding exhausted. The office is like a ghost town. Half the staff quit yesterday, and the rest of us don't know if we'll get paid. My heart sank. I'd been so focused on getting justice against Connor that I hadn't fully considered how this would affect my former coworkers. They weren't responsible for his crimes. What about unemployment benefits? I asked. Processing paperwork now. But Audrey, some people are really struggling. Single moms, people with kids in college. This is devastating. I felt a pang of guilt, but then I remembered Connor's smug face when he offered me 2 weeks severance. He brought this on himself and his employees. I just provided the truth. That afternoon, I received a call from Jennifer Walsh. Audrey, I wanted to let you know we're starting a legal defense fund for Datamax employees who lost their jobs. We figure it's the least we can do since you helped us recover our stolen money. The fund eventually raised $50,000 for displaced Datamax workers. It was a small comfort, but it helped ease my conscience. The investigation moved quickly. By Thursday, Connor had been arrested and charged with wire fraud, computer fraud, and theft of trade secrets. The local news showed him being led away in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled, and his confident demeanor completely gone. I watched the coverage from my living room, Tom beside me with a bowl of popcorn. It felt surreal to see my former boss on the evening news as a criminal defendant. The defendant systematically defrauded multiple clients over a period of years, the prosecutor told reporters. We have extensive documentation of his schemes, provided by former employees who chose to do the right thing. The anchor mentioned that Datamax's assets had been frozen pending the criminal investigation. The company was effectively dead. Tom squeezed my hand. Any regrets? I thought about it honestly. I regret that innocent people got hurt. But Connor made his choices. He could have treated people fairly. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Connor's wife, Helen. We'd met several times at company parties over the years. Audrey, I know you probably hate us right now, but I had to call, she said, her voice shaking. I had no idea what Connor was doing. The lawyers are telling me we might lose our house. I felt a stab of sympathy. Helen had always been kind to everyone at company events. She didn't deserve to pay for Connor's crimes. I'm sorry you're going through this, Helen, but you need to know, Connor brought this on himself. 2 weeks after Connor's arrest, I received a call that surprised me. It was David Kim, CEO of TechFlow Solutions, one of Datamax's former competitors. Audrey, I've been following the news about Datamax. Your name keeps coming up as someone who understands that industry inside and out. It's been a crazy few weeks, I admitted. I'd like to offer you a job. Senior VP of Client Relations. We need someone with your experience and integrity to help us rebuild trust in this market. The offer was generous, nearly double my Datamax salary, plus equity and a real severance package. After 14 years of being undervalued, it felt like validation. I accepted on the spot. My first day at TechFlow was surreal. Instead of a cramped cubicle, I had a corner office with windows. Instead of suspicious glances, my new colleagues treated me with respect. Word had spread about my role in exposing the Datamax fraud, and people seemed genuinely impressed that I'd chosen ethics over easy money. During my first team meeting, David introduced me to the staff. Audrey sacrificed her job security to do the right thing. That's exactly the kind of character we want at TechFlow. The applause felt genuine, not forced. For the first time in years, I felt valued at work. Over lunch, David explained TechFlow's philosophy. We believe in treating employees like family and clients like partners. No shortcuts, no shady deals. It sounded familiar, like the promises Connor used to make. But something told me David meant it. 6 weeks after starting at TechFlow, I learned that Connor had pled guilty to avoid a lengthy trial. The sentence was 7 years in federal prison and full restitution to the defrauded clients, over $2 million total. The news brought mixed emotions. Justice had been served, but seeing someone I'd once respected fall so far was still painful. Connor had thrown away a successful business and destroyed dozens of lives for what amounted to greed. At TechFlow, business was booming. Many former Datamax clients had signed with us, partly based on my reputation for honesty. It felt good to rebuild relationships based on trust rather than deception. Lisa, my former coworker, had also landed at TechFlow after I recommended her for a position. Over coffee, she told me about the final days at Datamax. Connor kept asking if anyone knew how the clients found out about the overcharges, she said. He never suspected you. Right up until his arrest, he thought it was some kind of computer hack. I laughed, but there was no joy in it. He always underestimated people. Lisa nodded. You know what's funny? In all those years, he never once said thank you for the extra hours, the weekend work, the loyalty, but he expected it anyway. That evening, I found an envelope in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note from Helen, Connor's wife. Audrey, I wanted you to know that I don't blame you for what happened. Connor made his choices. I hope you find peace and success in your new life. Thank you for being honest when it mattered. I kept that note in my desk drawer as a reminder that doing the right thing is never simple, but it's always necessary. 3 months into my new job, TechFlow won a major contract with Pacific Northwest Industries, Jennifer Walsh's company. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was now managing the same account I'd helped save from Connor's fraud. During the contract signing meeting, Jennifer pulled me aside. I want you to know that hiring you was the best decision we've made this year, she said. Our data is more secure than it's ever been, and your team's response time is incredible. We believe in treating clients like partners, I replied, echoing David's philosophy. Jennifer smiled. It shows. Connor used to treat us like walking dollar signs. The success at TechFlow was gratifying, but it also highlighted how badly Connor had mismanaged Datamax. With proper leadership and honest dealing, the tech services market was thriving. Connor had sabotaged his own success through greed. That afternoon, I received a LinkedIn message from a former Datamax employee I barely knew. Audrey, I heard about your new position at TechFlow. I wanted to thank you for speaking up about Connor's fraud. My unemployment benefits helped me get back on my feet, and I just started a new job. I know it wasn't easy to come forward, but you saved us all from working for a criminal. Messages like that made everything worthwhile. I'd been worried that my former colleagues would blame me for the company's collapse, but most seemed grateful that the truth had come out. The year after leaving Datamax, I found myself testifying at Connor's sentencing hearing. The judge wanted to hear from employees who'd been affected by his crimes. Connor looked different. Thinner, grayer, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of his expensive suits. When our eyes met across the courtroom, he looked away quickly. I kept my testimony brief and factual. I described my 14 years of loyalty, the insulting severance offer, and my decision to investigate when something didn't feel right. The defendant chose personal profit over his responsibilities to employees and clients, I told the judge. His actions destroyed not just his own company, but the livelihoods of 50 people who trusted him. Connor's lawyer argued for a reduced sentence, claiming his client was remorseful and had learned from his mistakes. But the evidence spoke louder than words. The judge sentenced Connor to the full 7 years, noting the systematic and prolonged nature of the defendant's fraud. As they led Connor away, he looked back at me one more time. This time he didn't look away. I saw something in his eyes, not anger or blame, but perhaps recognition that he'd brought this on himself. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked if I felt vindicated. I feel like justice was served, I said. But I take no pleasure in seeing anyone's life destroyed, even someone who hurt others. That evening, Tom and I celebrated quietly at home. The chapter was finally closed. 2 years after the Datamax collapse, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Agent Rodriguez from the FBI who had led the investigation. Audrey, I wanted to give you an update. Remember how Connor was selling data to Data Tech Industries? Of course. That was one of the biggest parts of the case. Well, we kept investigating Data Tech. Turns out they were involved in a much larger scheme, buying stolen data from companies across the country. Connor was just one supplier in a network of corrupt executives. My stomach dropped. How big are we talking? 47 companies, hundreds of millions in stolen intellectual property. Your evidence against Connor helped us crack the whole thing open. I sat down hard in my office chair. So there were other victims? Lots of them. But because of your courage in coming forward, we were able to stop a massive corporate espionage ring. Dozens of companies have recovered stolen data, and we've prevented millions in future losses. After hanging up, I stared out my office window at the Portland skyline. I'd thought my fight was just about getting fair treatment after 14 years of loyal service. I never imagined it would expose a nationwide criminal conspiracy. That afternoon, I called Jennifer Walsh to share the news. Her reaction was immediate. Audrey, you didn't just save our company, You saved dozens of companies. The magnitude of it all was overwhelming. One refused severance package had led to uncovering crimes across multiple states. The wider investigation made national news. CNN, MSNBC, and the Wall Street Journal all ran stories about the corporate espionage ring. My name came up occasionally as a whistleblower whose courage exposed the conspiracy, but I declined all interview requests. At TechFlow, my colleagues treated me like a hero. David Kim gave me a substantial bonus and promoted me to executive vice president. You've proven that doing the right thing isn't just morally correct, it's good business, he told me during the promotion ceremony. Our clients trust us because they know we have people like you setting the standard. The promotion came with a corner office on the top floor and a salary that finally reflected my worth. After years of being undervalued, the recognition felt incredible. But the best part was the culture at TechFlow. No one hoarded information or played political games. Transparency was valued, not punished. It was everything Datamax could have been if Connor had chosen integrity over greed. One afternoon, I got a surprise visit from Lisa, who now worked in our accounting department. "Remember when you used to talk about finding a company that actually valued its employees?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "I remember thinking it was impossible," I replied. Lisa gestured around my office. "Well, you found it, and you helped create it by refusing to let Connor get away with his garbage." She was right. By standing up to Connor, I hadn't just escaped a bad situation. I'd helped create a better one. 3 years after exposing Connor, I received an invitation that surprised me, the Portland Business Ethics Award. The Chamber of Commerce wanted to recognize my courage in exposing corporate fraud and commitment to honest business practices. The ceremony was held at the Hilton downtown. I arrived with Tom, both of us dressed in our best formal wear. The ballroom was filled with Portland's business elite, CEOs, community leaders, and journalists. When they called my name, I walked to the podium with my heart pounding. Looking out at the audience, I saw familiar faces. Jennifer Walsh, David Kim, several former Datamax employees who'd rebuilt their careers, and dozens of other people whose lives had been touched by the investigation. 3 years ago, I was just another employee who got a raw deal, I began. I never intended to become a whistleblower or expose a nationwide conspiracy. I just wanted fair treatment after 14 years of loyal service. I talked about the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's scary. I mentioned the innocent employees who'd been hurt by Connor's crimes and the companies that had been victimized by the espionage ring. Sometimes doing the right thing costs us in the short term, I concluded. But staying silent costs everyone in the long term. The standing ovation lasted several minutes. Afterward, people approached me with their own stories of workplace corruption and difficult ethical choices. A young woman who looked fresh out of college shook my hand firmly. "You've inspired me to speak up about problems at my company. Thank you." The awards ceremony made me reflect on how much had changed since that day in Connor's office. I'd gone from an undervalued employee to a respected executive. Datamax had gone from a growing company to a cautionary tale. Connor had gone from a successful CEO to a federal prisoner. But the changes went deeper than career moves and legal consequences. The entire local tech industry had shifted toward greater transparency and accountability. Companies now proudly advertise their ethical standards, knowing that clients were more concerned than ever about trustworthiness. TechFlow had become the gold standard for how tech companies should operate. We'd grown from 30 employees to over 100, all while maintaining the culture of honesty and respect that David had established. During a team meeting, our newest hire asked me about the Datamax situation she'd heard about. "The most important lesson," I told her, "is that loyalty should flow both ways. A company that demands your dedication should earn it through fair treatment." After the meeting, David pulled me aside. "I've been thinking about expanding to Seattle. Would you be interested in running our new Pacific Northwest division?" The offer was exciting, a chance to build something from the ground up, applying everything I'd learned about ethical business practices. "I'm interested," I said, "but only if we promise to never become like Datamax." David laughed. "That's exactly why you're the right person for the job." Setting up the Seattle office gave me a chance to implement the lessons I'd learned from both good and bad management. I hired several former Datamax employees who'd been blacklisted by other companies simply for working there. They were talented people who deserved second chances. One of my first hires was Janet, Connor's former assistant. She'd been devastated when Datamax collapsed, believing she'd somehow failed to prevent the fraud. "I should have seen the signs," she told me during her interview. "Connor was very good at hiding his crimes," I replied. "Even I didn't figure it out until I started looking specifically for problems." Janet brought incredible organizational skills and institutional memory about what worked and what didn't in tech companies. She became my operations manager and helped create systems that prevented the kind of unchecked executive power that had corrupted Connor. The Seattle office thrived from day one. Our reputation for honesty attracted clients who'd been burned by other vendors. We won contracts not by being the cheapest or flashiest, but by being the most trustworthy. 6 months after opening, we'd already outgrown our initial space. The success felt different from Datamax's early growth, sustainable rather than frantic, built on solid foundations rather than Connor's personality cult. During our office warming party, I looked around at the team we'd assembled. Former Datamax employees working alongside new hires, everyone focused on serving clients with integrity. This was what Connor could have built if he'd chosen differently. 4 years after leaving Datamax, I received news that Connor was being released early for good behavior. The announcement brought back a flood of memories and complicated emotions. I'd built a successful career partly because of what he'd done to me, but I couldn't forget the pain he'd caused so many people. Good behavior in prison didn't erase the damage to his former employees, clients, and family. Tom found me reading the news article at our kitchen table, my coffee growing cold. "How do you feel about this?" he asked gently. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me hopes he's learned something and will try to make amends, but part of me thinks 5 years isn't enough for what he did." A week later, I received an unexpected letter. The return address was from a halfway house in Portland. Connor had written to me. The letter was handwritten, 2 pages of careful script. "Audrey, I know I have no right to contact you, and I understand if you throw this letter away without reading it. I wanted you to know that I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, and I finally understand how badly I hurt people who trusted me. You were one of the most loyal employees I ever had, and I repaid that loyalty with disrespect and dishonesty. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I've been following news about TechFlow, and I'm genuinely happy to see you succeed. You deserved better than what I gave you. I hope someday I can make amends for the damage I caused. Connor." I read the letter 3 times, looking for signs of manipulation or self-pity. But it seemed genuine, the words of someone who'd finally confronted the consequences of his choices. I decided not to respond to Connor's letter, but I kept it in my desk drawer. Whether his remorse was genuine would be proven by his actions, not his words. Meanwhile, TechFlow continued to grow. We opened a 3rd office in Vancouver and were considering expansion to California. I'd been promoted to regional vice president, overseeing operations across the Pacific Northwest. The success was gratifying, but the real satisfaction came from the culture we'd built. Employees felt valued, clients felt respected, and ethical behavior was rewarded rather than punished. The journey had been painful, but it had led me exactly where I needed to be.